According to ToggleTrack, which is the app that I use for tracking the time I spend on my languages, I have so far spent 269 hours and 15 minutes learning Italian. And in the meantime, I've come across some really good websites, podcasts, YouTube channels, apps, and books. And today I am going to be sharing most of them, if not all of them, with you. So if you're thinking about learning Italian or if you have already started, I hope you find this video useful. As always, I'm gonna leave timestamps down below, so feel free to skip to whatever part interests you the most. And let's begin. Since at almost any given moment I'm learning several languages at a time, I really like to soft launch a new language by using an app. This I find helps me slowly get exposure to the language and also start picking up some basics before I am ready to go all in on that new language. Here I would say choose whatever app you prefer, because we Italian learners are lucky in that sense because there's a lot of apps that have Italian as an option. But I would say that my two favorites for learning Italian were Memrise and Speakly. Memrise honestly changes their interface so often that I don't really know what it looks like right now, but last time I used it for Italian and I had a paid subscription for that. It was mostly short videos where native speakers pronounce a word or a phrase, and then later there's different types of questions that test your retention of those words. I want to say that I used Memrise for about a month, but my all-time favorite app to pick up the basics is Speakly. This is not sponsored, by the way. Speakly doesn't just help you practice words and grammar. What they also have, which I personally really enjoyed, is little podcasts or mini audio stories that also come with a transcript and translation. I would say that the biggest con for me, however, when it comes to Speakly was the price. It's pretty steep, and especially when you're already paying for a bunch of other language and non-language apps and services. Another app that I really like and talk about all the time is Closemaster. I personally use it to mainly acquire vocabulary, and the way it works is it shows you a sentence with one word missing, and then you have to either type that word in or you can choose the word from one of the 4 options that they give you. It is, however, not perfect for beginners because unlike Speakly, that first shows you a full sentence and only then tests you by removing one of the words, Closemaster doesn't really teach you per se, it just shows you sentences and then you either get it right or you get it wrong, and that's how you learn. So all of the apps that I've mentioned so far I paid for, but the good news is that you don't really have to pay for all of them at the same time. I feel like Memrise for me was really good when I was just trying to pick up some basic phrases like hello, how are you, I'm sorry, and things like that. Then I moved on to Speakly, and then after that I stopped paying for Speakly and I switched to Closemaster when I decided that I already knew enough basics and my main goal was to acquire as much vocabulary as I could. And if you cannot afford a paid app, or if you just don't want to pay, you can always use Duolingo. Duolingo also has an Italian course. I personally used it for some time, but it was not my favorite, but it is an option and it is free. By the way, it has already become somewhat of a tradition on my channel, and I am going to continue it in this video too. Everything that I mention in this video, as well as stuff that I won't mention just because I don't have enough time, is going to be in this Notion page that I have created for you guys. As always, you will find it on my Ko-fi page completely for free, but you can also leave me a small tip if you find the resources useful, which I will really appreciate because I tend to spend a couple of hours collecting all those resources. I'm going to be honest with you, finding the perfect textbook for Italian has been, for some reason, really hard for me. I initially started with this little book here that is meant for Spanish speakers, and the reason why I picked it up was because of the similarities between Spanish and Italian. So this book doesn't really explain things that are intuitively clear to Spanish speakers, but instead it kind of focuses on the differences between Spanish and Italian. One major downside of this book, however, is the fact that it doesn't have any audio. But even before I realized that that was a major flaw, I still wanted to get another book that is a little bit more grammar focused, just because I feel Like, it works best for me to have one comprehensive textbook and then one textbook that explains grammar in more detail and also gives me more exercises to practice. So the book that I ended up getting for grammar was this one, but unfortunately when I was moving from Russia to the US, I just left it in Russia, and so I haven't really studied with it. I have, however, heard really good things about this book, including from one of my viewers, so it might be worth checking out. Just keep in mind that this version is completely monolingual. That means that all of the explanations will come in Italian too, but the good news is that they recently published a bilingual version of the textbook, and that one comes with explanations in English. As for myself, after trying many textbooks that are available here in the United States, I started using this book recommended to me by my friend, and I'm actually really enjoying it. It has simple grammar explanations, again all in Italian, and has a lot of different types of exercises like text to read, writing, filling in the blanks, and so on. But at the same time, what I would highly recommend to you if you're just starting to learn Italian is that you visit the websites of these 3 publishers that make materials for Italian learners, and try looking through their catalogs, because they have a ton of books for different ages, different purposes, like studying at an Italian university or working in Italy. They also have books for improving different skills like grammar or pronunciation, and most importantly, they have books that are bilingual and will come with explanations in English, sometimes in Chinese and other languages. And the reason why I'm recommending these websites and not, for example, these books is because I personally have had really bad experience with books that were published in English-speaking countries. I find that a lot of those textbooks focus on tourism, which is never the number one priority or the reason why I choose to learn languages. And then another thing that I don't really like about those textbooks is that they tend to baby you a lot and kind of protect you from scary, bad grammar. Like, sometimes books will tell you right away that they will not teach you something, or that you do not have to worry about something because it is way too complicated, and that's just not how language learning works for me. Websites. So the first website that I wanted to share with you belongs to one of the publishers that I have just mentioned. Besides books, they also have a lot of free materials on their website, including graded readers, grammar and vocabulary exercises, infographics, articles with comprehension questions, and so on. You can browse them by categories, or you can just go to the index page where they list all of their free materials. Another great website is onlineitalianclub.com. On this website, you can find thousands of free materials, either by skills that you want to practice, like for example, grammar, vocabulary, listening, and so on. Or you can also choose your level of Italian and then see a checklist of all the things you need to know for that level. And then of course you can study those topics with the free materials on the website. I would say that it's a really good website for self-studying. Impariamo Italiano is great if you want to practice what you've learned with free exercises. You can practice grammar and vocabulary here, but you can also learn new words with their collection of infographics. And they also have a nice dictionary of Italian idioms, although it is monolingual, so keep that in mind. Italiano Bello. I personally like the website for the verb conjugation trainer, but there's also free courses for beginners. There's a visual dictionary, grammar references, and other free materials available. I personally love reading in my target languages, and I have made a whole video about it. I'm gonna link it somewhere here. And graded readers are my favorite way to start reading in a foreign language. And thankfully, there's a lot to choose from when it comes to Italian. I first started with graded readers from Alma Edizioni, and what I like is that they have quite a lot of stories, and on the cover you can see both the level and the number of words you have to know to be able to read the story, so you can kind of better gauge what is best for you or your current level. You can also buy a digital version, but I have to warn you that it's not going to be a PDF. It's more like you buy access to a book on their platform, and then you can either access it on your computer or you can download their app on your digital device. I, for example, used it on my iPad, and then there you can read it, you can listen to the audio and make notes. I will warn you though that some of the stories are a little bit boring. Others make you go like, what the hell did I just read? But I think the graded readers that I've read from Alma Edizioni were the first graded readers that I read in Italian, and at that time I felt okay about the quality of the stories just because I was so excited to be able to start reading in the language. But you also don't really have to spend money on graded readers unless you want to read like dozens of them. There's a couple of free resources too. One of the publishers that I've already mentioned has these 3 graded readers that are completely free. You can download them on their website, and I'll leave all the links in the Notion database. There's also another website called Easy Readers that normally sells e-readers, but it has 2 free ones. And another free option would be the ItalianExperiment.com. It has children's stories in Italian, and here you'll find the original text, the audio, and the translation. But be prepared for fairy tale specific vocabulary and intonation that is not always natural. Besides stories, what you can also get is books that are supposed to train your reading skills. I, for example, have this one that is called Easy Italian Reader, and it's basically divided into 3 parts. The first part is all about this American student who lives in Italy and just her life and her friends, which is not very exciting. The second part is about Italian history, and then the third part is this short story, I believe, that originally was written in Italian for Italians. So the book kind of gets progressively more difficult as you go. And then I also have this one, which is called Better Reading Italian, and it's basically just a collection of different types of texts like poems, documents, newspaper or magazine articles, and so on. And again, I can't really mention all of the readers without making this video way too long, so I'm going to link more books for you to read and more free resources too in that Notion database that will be linked in the description. But personally, once I feel like graded readers are a little bit too easy for me and native books are still really hard, I try to read as many articles as I can about pretty much anything that interests me, be it culture, politics, psychology, languages, etc. So for reading articles, I use this app called Link that lets you look up words as you read, and then I review those words with different types of exercises in the same app. But again, I also have a whole video on how I approach reading in different languages, so if you're interested in that, definitely go check that out. I'm going to combine YouTube channels and podcasts into the same category just because a lot of Italian teachers that I follow actually have both.
When it comes to more friendly beginner material, I would recommend these
Podcast. Иди на ручки, иди, господи, боже мой. Let's just pretend this is not happening right now. Being a working mom is a really tough job. What can I say? I would recommend Coffee Break Italian if you're not ready for a monolingual podcast yet. In this podcast, English-speaking hosts will teach you useful expressions, some grammar, as well as some things that you would need to know about the culture of the country. I personally am not a fan of bilingual podcasts just because I feel like I never have the patience to sit through the English parts. But then again, I also had an unfair advantage having learned Spanish before I started learning Italian. So in my case, I dove right into monolingual content, mostly content made by these 3 teachers. The first one is Teacher Stefano. There's both podcasts and a YouTube channel, though I prefer the podcast. This was my favorite podcast when I was just starting because it has different types of episodes, so you can kind of know what to expect. There's episodes where he tests your listening, episodes with useful phrases, cultural notes, and I think he has also recently started a new series where he talks about famous Italian brands. Another YouTube channel, and this one is super famous, is Italian with Lucrezia, I believe. She also has a podcast, although in this case I prefer the channel actually, and she makes a lot of videos where she explains grammar and vocabulary, but I would say that my favorite videos are her vlogs and also her resource recommendations. She recommends a lot of novels, textbooks, and so on. And if you like her, you'll probably like Italiano Automatico, another YouTube channel / podcast. If your Italian, however, is closer to intermediate, I would recommend the following 3 podcasts: Vaporetto Italiano, Podcast Italiano, and Stivale Italiano. Here's what I like and don't like about podcasts. I really don't like short episodes just because I'm usually occupied by something else when I'm listening to podcasts, so I don't want to be looking for what to listen to next. Another thing I don't really like is I don't like podcasts or YouTube videos that talk about travel. What I really do like is personal stories from the hosts, and I also really like interviews with experts from different areas. I guess I really like content about culture, but more in the sense of everyday life and not just something that you can take, put in a frame, and then hang on a wall in a museum. So these are the things that are interesting to me, and I feel like the 3 podcasts that I have just mentioned talk about all those things in one way or another. Another great resource of video and audio content is Lingopie, which has podcasts, documentaries, series, short films, and all of that comes with interactive subtitles, which means you can click on a word, see the translation, and then practice all of the new words and phrases later in the same app. Not gonna lie, Italian music was probably the number 1 reason why I decided to learn the language. I'm a really big fan of pop music and ballads, so most of my recommendations will lie in those areas somewhere. First of all, if you also like pop music, I suggest you look up Sanremo, which is a huge annual music festival in Italy, and you'll find playlists either here on YouTube or on Spotify. I personally have found a lot of new music because of the festival. I also currently have 2 playlists with Italian music on my Spotify, one with more contemporary music that has artists like Fulminacci, Gazzelle, Colapesce Di Martino, Canova, Marco Mengoni, and so on. And then the other one is just this playlist that has bangers from the 70s or the 80s with artists like Ricchi e Poveri, Umberto Tozzi, Pupo, Toto Cutugno, Riccardo Folli. Of course, I'll leave links to both of those playlists in the description so you can check them out if you want, but I'm also open to your recommendations, so if you know some good artists, please do send them my way. And that is pretty much everything for today. Don't forget to access the Notion resources collection that will be linked in the description, and if you're interested in a similar type of video but for Spanish, I also have one that you can watch here. Thank you so much for watching this till the end, and I will see you in my next video. Bye bye!